Welcome to this session on InterBase to Firebird. I first like to introduce myself. My name is Quan Tan. I'm going to talk about the actual conversion of an InterBase database into a Firebird database. Next to me on my left side is Edwin van der Kraan. He's going to do a part on how to replace the BDE with IBDAC components. This has been a short-term change in the program that we are doing this in two different parts. Okay, the database I'm going to use as an example for this work is coming from a system called FIX. FIX stands for Forecasting, Inventory and Control System, and is a planning system for production and warehouses that started in 1994 in a paradox system, as a paradox system. Around 2000, the customer thought, well, it might be interesting to have also the warehouses in the rest of Europe connected, and therefore we made a totally new version, this time with Delphi and InterBase. Starting in InterBase 6.0, went on to 7.5, and at the present it's in 2009. InterBase. Okay. Demo. Well, yes, let's have a look at the database. Of course, I have to use IB Expert for it. Officially, Better Office is, of course, a sponsor of this conference, so we have to by contract. It's a database. It's a database with 173 tables. I've seen much larger ones only this morning. A lot of procedures. I do enjoy writing procedures, especially, and all the rest. It's in total at this moment around 16 gigabyte of database. Look at it again. Well, this is a database I wanted to convert into a Firebird database, basically to do some testing to see if Firebird especially is more stable, as we in the past have had some problems with corrupt indices in InterBase, and we'd like to see what happens in the Firebird environment. So what do we know? What would I normally do is I would extract actually the metadata from this database using IB Expert, where you have a tool called extract metadata, where I can put in a file. Well, I will put something in here at the moment. I will extract everything. First, I will only do the metadata. That's the only thing at this point. As I don't want to wait for it, I have already, of course, done it. So let me show you. I will have to reduce this a bit because the resolution of the screen is not that good. Okay, this is a normal script made by IB Expert. As you can see, it creates a database, in this case an InterBase database as it was defined. It has all the different areas, etc. Normally, in this case, this script contains the following sections. We have a user-defined functions, domains, generators, exceptions, stored procedures in the creation of an empty stored procedure, tables, views, primary keys, foreign keys, indices, triggers, and of course the filling of the stored procedure, the body itself. Starting with this, I want to change this script into a script to generate a Firebird database. Starting from the top, first you see actually is here the clients. The client and the create database. This is a complete InterBase section that has to be replaced for Firebird. I've done that in this one, where you can see I changed the client into the FB client DLL. I've created the database, this time with an FTP. Also, this time it's on port 3080 because of the Firebird. I have a Firebird 2.1 in here that is working on port 3080. Next step actually is to get to the next section, is to user-defined functions. User-defined functions, I have had a look at them, what happened. Basically, you be careful for is you have to make sure that you have the necessary UDFs in the Firebird environment. For instance, I'm using a free ad hoc UDF in InterBase. I needed the Firebird version to set in to make it run in Firebird. Except from that, there are also issues like what I was using here was also a user-defined function called floor. Floor is an external function that is necessary in InterBase, but not in Firebird, because in Firebird, floor is one of those functions already defined as an internal function. So this one has to be deleted. I believe I also have another one, the mod in there. There it is. That's another of those functions. So you would have to check if there are functions that you now use as an external function, have defined as an external function, that are already as internal functions defined in Firebird. There are a number of reserved words actually that will get you into trouble, and one of those is the floor. Luckily, I got a bit of help by getting some information from Holger Klemt, for whom I want to thank him for the file with a part of the source code of IB Expert. With that, I could create a keyword spreadsheet. The keywords here are all as found in the different release notes of all the different versions. So we have InterBase 6.5 up till InterBase XE, Firebird as from 1.5 up to 2.5. And I just put an X in which, depending on which version you are using. In my case, it's only really interesting on the part of which is your target database. Well, my target database is a Firebird 2.1. So I want to know what is happening in Firebird 2.1 as a reserved word. For that, I will only want Firebird 2.1. And that was not reserved in my InterBase 2.9, because those are the issues that this instance. And there you see one of the interesting parts, of course, the Bigend. The very first one is, Bigend is one of the, is a data type. It's a data type that's defined in Firebird. It's not defined in InterBase. Yeah? So if you would have used a word that's Bigend in your InterBase procedures or whatever, you would get into trouble. You would have to replace that. This list is as complete as possible, especially on the Firebird side, and therefore for a conversion from InterBase to Firebird, I think very useful. Okay, going back to my script. So what I did was go through these functions, clearing out the floor and the mod external functions, and went on to the next part. The next part is actually the domains. In domains, you can have problems with reserved words, especially big and stuff like that. Basically, I'm quite lucky. In my domains there was no real issue. So going from there, I didn't have to change that. Important for doing all this work is to create a script that will run in the end without errors in creating a Firebird database, of course. So you would have to look through each of the parts and look for what the problems can be. Well, the next section would be in the area of the generators. Well, again, going from InterBase to Firebird, generators are not a big problem. If I can find the section. Too many domains. Okay. We have the generators. The biggest difference is actually that a generator in InterBase generates an integer, but in Firebird it generates a Bigend. So for those things you would have to really look into your source code if there's an important change. In my case, as I want to go just for some testing, I left it at not changing my source code to the Bigends. Okay, so I have taken the generator part, going on and moved to the next issue, and those are exceptions. I haven't written many, didn't need them, so I'll leave it at that. I just could take them. Then I got into the section of stored procedures. Well, stored procedures, as I said, I like them a lot. There is one big issue between InterBase, especially as from the the 2007 version, is where it allows larger names for metadata names. It allows up to 67 characters. Firebird only allows 31, so that if you try to run the script, it will go for, well, actually object names being too large. It can't store them in the system tables. To find those, of course you can run the script and you can look where does it bounce. There are of course other ways. Let me have a quick look here. If so these were the sections, and that's, you can check for yourself, asking the system tables where there are object names larger than 31 characters. Looking at the different metadata object names, we have character sets where you can look in this one, the select RDB character set name. That's a relatively easy one. Collations, domains. Here there's an issue. I've taken this part out because of the user-assigned domains, the RDB, $, whatever number. Those I don't care actually. They should be generated by Firebird. But in the tables, you look in the RDB $ relations. Don't look at the system table, so system flag is 0. Fields can also be have a name that are longer than 31 characters. So, and again, the system flag should not be on. Indices, constraints, triggers, of course, can also be to large generators. With stored procedures, you would look at system flag can be 0 or can be null. In both cases, they are interesting. They are not system issued ones. Also here we can find them. So there's a way of looking at it. I've gone through looking at my database. It meant it was okay. So I had to convert all these stored procedure names that are longer than S. Here you can see them. I've made a list of it. basically I listed all the ones that are longer than 31 characters. I also listed a number that are smaller than 31, but are from the same type. And I don't want to change names just for the ones that are longer than 31 characters. I would want to change the whole group. So I took away, as you can see, the erledigt, the IGT and the ONG from Planung, German for planning. And with that I could create smaller stored procedure names that remain within the border of the maximum of 31 characters. So I've done all these, and I've also looked at the dependencies, because stored procedures, if you look in the InterBase side, if I take a stored procedure, let me take one that was in the example here. Let's take this one. So it's an erledigt planning forecast. Well, that's a new name. Let's go for the original name. The erledigt planning forecast. Looking at that in my IB expert, did I find it here? And here you have a tab for dependencies. Oh, this one did not have a dependency, so because there's nothing here on the left side. Yeah, that's where I care for. So I will have to look for. Oh, it's the normal one. It's not too long. Dependencies. Let's see if there is one here. No, it's very hard with such a low resolution to find the correct procedure. Finally, here it is. This one tells me that this procedure will is called upon by this procedure. This procedure somewhere over here calls this the procedure I want to change its name from. And looking at that, if I would do it in the database straight, I would first have to get it out of here, commentate it out, then change the name, and then have to take the comments out again. So within a script, I don't have to do that. I can do a quick search and replace. I normally do that with something like my tool Ultra Edit, which is I think a great text editor. You can make also macros with it and just let it go and search and replace and all those things. I've done that for all the stored procedures, and that worked out well up to, well, did it over here. So now I have done the domains generates exceptions, Userdefined the stored procedures. I've changed all the names that are required. Next part is the tables. Looking at the tables, well, let's have some fun. You will see. I should have shortened it. Okay. How come I think that this is faster than just doing a search? I don't know. There will be an end. We are at the U, and there are the tables. But tables, they actually mostly work with domains. I have checked for field names longer, table names and field names longer than 31 characters. Luckily, that wasn't, they weren't there, so I didn't have to make any changes in those names. What you can have is one of those reserved words called Boolean. Basically, reserved word is it in InterBase because it's a field type in InterBase. This field type boolean I haven't used in this database. We were using normal yes/no fields as from the start of the InterBase 6.0, and we never went away from that. So I didn't have a problem with that in the tables. I did have it in the stored procedures because also variables can have a type boolean, and I sometimes use flags with a true false or something like that. Those I had to change. Next to the tables there are the views. Everything went actually without many problems. Once you have checked, especially on the 31 names, and you have checked on the reserved words, you are basically free. At least I could create with that a final script that could run to make a Firebird database, which I did. I had it run, and it created about the same database. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, that does not matter that much. In comparison with the InterBase database, number of domains is the same, number of tables is the same, the views. I've deleted some of the stored procedures. If you look at this list, you will see a number with an X behind it. That means I have deleted it without having to convert it because they are mentioned as an old version of a stored procedure. Sometimes during the lifetime of a database, you create a new stored procedure. I want to keep the old one. I just rename it actually into an old. So I can look it up the moment there are problems with the new stored procedure. After a while, you can kill them. In this case, this was a nice moment going for the Firebird, where I take this. Let's take these old procedures with me into a new database. So the ones with the X I've deleted. Going back to IB Expert, so I have a few procedures less. Well, to be completely correct, it's 11 procedures. All my triggers have gone over: generators, exceptions, the Fs. Basically ODF because I took some out, the floor and the mod, but with Firebird I get two system ones back, the RDB$ get context and the RDB$ set context. So that's why I have 23 ODFs. Also my indices were set back and all that. There, with it, I could create it. So I had a nice database, nicely actually correct with the number of tables and all that. It was time to get the data over. For trying to get the data over, I thought, well, let's have a look at one of the very nice features of IB Expert being the IBE scripts, possibility IBE blocks, especially as I have not been using that in the past. And this gave me a great opportunity to have a look at it. Being a novice at this IB block, I borrowed out of a demo sample from samples from IB Expert to create a script that I could use for the filling the database, so getting the data from InterBase database to the Firebird database, especially as the IB blocks IB script allows me to make connections with two different databases within the same script. Now, the only problem I have is I can't seem not to be able to find my script. I'm sorry, I can't find it. I will find it again and put it on the downloads in the download file. Sorry, I cannot show it. Still, it wouldn't be that interesting. I had it running about a day and a half ago. I started it up and I thought, well, that gives me enough time before having to leave yesterday evening to go to Bremen. As the time was passing, I was even getting past my dinner time and all that. At a certain moment I thought, well, now I have to stop doing this. I stopped it after about 35 hours. It was almost done in getting the tables, the data over, but it still would then have to activate all the indices and all that. So there was no way it could do it. Of course, I'm very lucky here to also see Olga Klemt in the audience. He was talking this morning in the session about actually this problem or this activity want to get data from one database onto another, and he was explaining that you can do that probably the fastest with so-called external tables. I have tried this. I once totally rebuilt this InterBase database by exporting everything into external tables and then importing it into a totally new database just to make sure that it's completely clean. Sometimes then even distrust restores and all that. So, of course, it didn't help in that situation, but it is very fast, especially if in comparison to the example for the sample script I used. It should not take 35 hours plus. Still, it will probably take me at least 4 hours or something like that. It's not something that's done in 5 seconds, but okay. For 16 gigabyte, I can allow it. So, sorry I can't show it to you. Hopefully next time. Okay, let me get back to my slides. Dependencies you can also check for. You have to look into the RDB dollar, table depend name and all that of the dependencies table. Watch a bit for, you have to look for types where the dependent on type 5 meaning a stored procedure. These ones, type 2 and 5, are stored procedures and triggers. You have to know which one. Those are the interesting parts of the dependencies. If you find that you can use this variable to get to the information on a certain procedure name. So what I've done up to now, I've checked the UDF libraries to be able to have them in the Firebird UDF directories. I extracted all the metadata in SQL scripts. I changed the set client and create database. I checked for reserved words. I checked for the UDF versus the internal functions. And I checked for the metadata names longer than 31 characters. Basically, I had it very easy. This enormous database, well, to me it's an enormous 16 gigabyte database, still comes from an InterBase 6.0, which is the same basis of Firebird. Yes, the InterBase 6.0 was the one that went into open source. So during the years, we haven't put much of the newest keywords and all that. We haven't used it that much in the database because we didn't have to do that many changes to the database. So I did not have to do a lot of other things like the other problem areas, well, I didn't have them other than in the stored procedures. I didn't have characters, more than 31 character names. You would have to look into a lot more if that's dependent upon it. Because if, for instance, is in a table, you would have to look into dependencies again. Still, you can do a lot by search and replace, but it's more work. I didn't have Boolean fields. Yeah, you would have to do a data conversion. It's not just an export and import of data. You would actually have to change it. Probably most easier to use is a small length field in InterBase, in Firebird, with a 1 and a 0 as true and false. But you have to put that in when you transfer the data. I haven't used the writes, especially from the InterBase encryption. InterBase has this option of encrypting not just the database, you can even do the communication, all that, but it requires an extra set of writes, which are not basically available in Firebird. You don't need them there. Looking at those, you would probably do it quite easy. Firebird does not use encryption in this way, therefore those writes you would have to take out, I would expect. The changes, even the ones I made, but all of the other changes, it will lead or has to lead to changes in the application. If I change the stored procedure name that is called from the application, then you better change that in the application also. I haven't done that yet. The most of the work actually will be in the last part. I would have to improve the database for Firebird specifics. A very simple one that I mentioned before was the Bigend. It has to be used in all my ID fields. Because basically a generator gives me back a Bigend. At a certain point it might get into big trouble if I would try to store that all the time in integer fields. What would cost even much more time would be the queries. Firebird and InterBase differ quite a lot on the way how the query optimizers work. The query optimizer of Firebird has changed a lot. Some say, well, I'm here at the Firebird conference, so I have to admit it. No. The Firebird query optimizer outperforms the InterBase query optimizer. So to make use of all the good features of Firebird, you would really have to look also at optimizing your queries. But that will take a lot of time if you use a lot of queries. Okay, I've come to the end of my part. Are there any questions? Well, in that case, I'll still be around here for today, tomorrow. If you do get some questions, think of some questions, you can just get me, put a hand on my shoulder, and sometimes I do turn around and I will try to answer your questions. And I will now pass on the microphone and all that to my colleague here on the left.
So, because I don't want to cut in someone's coffee break time, I will have a quick demo on how to replace your BDE without much problems to IBDOC components. I've taken my favorite example in Delphi, the mesh tab. As you can see here, we have our different, we have our T database that's set up to use an InterBase database with the normal username and password. You see here the old-fashioned T tables, or someone you want to know, and the queries. And if I run it, it will run. You can browse, you can edit, let's say, okay, I like this customer, I give it a 10% discount, it will calculate, it will save, and it's stored in the database. No problem whatsoever. I have the same setup, it's called the same, it's called differently, but it's exactly the same as you can see. And in the IBDuck components, you have a BDE IBX migration wizard. Because I use BDE, I want to replace the BDE components. On the current open project, select all the units. I don't want to make backups and write logs because the logs don't tell you anything anyway. It only tells you that there are so many components replaced in that form. And I have a backup already, so I don't want them to make it for me. It says, okay, do you want to save? Yeah, save, and then it says, okay, it has been done. Then the only thing which I don't know, as you can see here, I now have, instead of a T database, I have a T IBC connection. I have my T IBC tables and T IBC queries, so that worked. But if I run it now, I will probably get a nice error message because the database name is missing. I have to write somewhere. I don't know why he changed the database path and put it into the server instead of the database name. And what I also would like to add is the IBC transaction, because when you work with databases you have to use transactions. Don't forget it, because you can put stuff basically with IBDuck, but that's another story. It's better to use two transactions, one read transaction and one write transaction, because as you can see here on the IB query, it's designed to have two transactions. You can have the normal transaction should be your read-only transaction, and the update transaction should be a transaction where you can update, so you don't get in trouble with your transactions in your database with the oldest active and that sort of stuff going over, differ in the millions and killing your database. So I've changed the database. It's now to the correct one. I have to set my transaction, my default transaction, to the correct one. Save it. Yeah. It's also somehow next transaction. And you can see in about 30 seconds I have switched from BDE to IBDuck. The cool part about IBDuck, of course, is also that instead of InterBase database, I can also use a Firebird database. The only thing I have to do is connect to the correct database, and I have to tell him that he should use FBCon DLL, or otherwise it will. I can show you what happens if I don't do that, because he's then going to use the GDS32 DLL. Or did I just make a typo? Let's see. Almost up higher. Sometimes it's better if you name everything the same. Better for demoing. You see now it's complaining about the on this structure because it takes the GDS32 DLL standardly, because that's, I think it's somewhere in the source code of the IBDuck that uses as a default. And now if I say it uses FB client, in the background it's exactly the same database. And now I'm running my old BDE application with IBDEC on a Firebird database that we converted using the tips my colleague Guan gave, and as you can see it runs, and I can still do my editing and that sort of stuff, and it all works. I can save, I can close, and it's all stored in the database. So thank you for your attention, and let's have some coffee.